I saw college as the best option, the easiest way to exit the environment that I was in. If I had just said I'm going to go start my own farm, that would have been even more difficult to sell to my dad. This was a really clean, dramatic break from what I was doing. And in that sense, it was easier to wipe the slate clean than to have a subtle modification of it. So I went to college with just simply that goal in mind. This is a way out. Now with that, in that same time, that relationship with the young lady I described was also growing. So she came from a challenging household. I moved my wife out of her mother's house when my wife was 17 years old. You can imagine how that was viewed by her mother, but we knew that we wanted to change our family trees in many ways. So we got married when she was 19, I had just turned 20. And so going on to college was again a way to provide a separation, but legitimatize being together. We had a little trailer, another entrepreneurial kind of story in this. We needed a place to live, so I paid $1,245 for an 8 by 42 foot trailer. That was our first home, $1,245. We moved it just off campus, the Ohio State University, where other students were living. It was a wonderful environment, and we paid, our lot rent was $27.50 a month. That was our biggest obligation. And we lived there for 4 years while I went to Ohio State University. Great time of our lives, and it gave us the confidence that we can have very little, and still, if we're developing our relationship, the things that really matter in life, we're gonna be fine. And in that period of time, there's all kinds of things I can do to generate income for us to survive. I can buy and sell cars, which is what I did a lot, remodel houses, paint apartment complexes, things that I could do on my own time, where I was never locked into time. I could work it in around my studies and family obligations, but still create extraordinary income compared to just having a job. So I graduated from the Ohio State University with my degree in psychology. Again, not anticipating using that. I was not interested in being a therapist or a counselor at all, but I had a lot of personal understanding at that point. I happened to graduate right at the height of the Vietnam War. And I got a draft notice that my number was 7, which meant that I had 30 days to enlist. Well, also, as part of this story, being raised Mennonite, I had registered when I was 18 years old, and it was automatic that I'd registered as a conscientious objector, which is a tradition in that faith tradition. That was an unusual kind of situation. My draft board in my little county had never before encountered a conscientious objector with a college degree. So rather than just serving for 2 years, like in a hospital as an orderly, they discovered I could do anything in health education and welfare. And I discovered an opportunity through some connections that I could be an adjunctive therapist at a really prestigious psychiatric hospital just outside Columbus, Ohio, in Worthington. So I did that. It was a beautiful fit, a beautiful opportunity for me. It's very creative, very entrepreneurial. It wasn't structured like a regular job, but that's the only time in my life where I actually got a paycheck, because I was fulfilling the 2 years that I was required by the country to put in. But it was in helping a lot of the young kids coming back from Vietnam, serving them as they kind of got reestablished, and a lot of them came back really challenged, to say the least. So I did that. But knowing that the clock was ticking, my time of obligation was up. I was ready to move on again. But I elected, instead of just starting another entrepreneurial venture, to go back to school to get a graduate degree. Again, with no intention that this is somehow going to position me for a better job, but just the hunger that I had for personal learning. So I got my master's degree in clinical psychology. And after that, when we finished that, we sold, when we moved from that little trailer that we had, that we paid $1,245 for. We lived in for 4 years, had our first child in there, and then sold it for $2,250, which was the first down payment on the house that we purchased while I worked at the psychiatric hospital. And then after that stint, we sold that, took the money, I sold my Jaguar XK convertible, and we took that money. And for the living expenses for the next 2 years, while I got my master's degree, I also, because of the work experience that I had, was given a teaching assistantship, so my tuition was erased and I got a small monthly stipend. So no student loan, finished the graduate degree, and again, ready to explore. No proven path in place, but ready to explore. We took 3 months, bought a little travel trailer, had one little baby at that point. We spent 3 months just traveling throughout the country. And I met a gentleman in California that I decided we wanted to do some ideas together. And I became a therapist with him in a proven practice. And I was totally independent, responsible for my own clients. And I did that for 3 months. 3 months. I said, this is way too traditional. I thought maybe there's a way to apply this graduate degree that I have. But it was, frankly, pretty boring for me. And I came home and told Joanne, I said, if I have to listen to some spoiled, elitist kid complain about his situation one more day, I'm going to go nuts. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So I just quit. I've never been fearful about quitting, because if you understand the entrepreneurial process, you can land on your feet anytime. So I picked up some of the things that had gotten me through graduate school and skills I'd learned on the farm. So I could do repairs, people's homes, fix up things, yard work, landscaping, all that. So we did that, and immediately we're just flooded with requests. We were so busy we couldn't see straight. And I did that for several months, and in that period of time, met a guy that we were going to the same church together in California. He had a used car lot. He wasn't thrilled about the process of selling directly to the customers. He liked the process of finding the cars, rehabbing them, getting them back on the lot. And I said, man, I'm your guy. And so I went to work with him. Get no base, no guarantee, strictly commissioned on what I sold. But I loved the process. Being a car guy anyway, I built a car of my own, the first car I drove back in the farm days. I loved that process and started working with people. In the car business, it's easy to do what they call prejudge. So somebody walks on the lot and you immediately decide, is this a qualified customer or not? Well, I kind of looked between the lines with a lot of people, and had a kid who walked on the lot, wasn't even driving, which is a real red flag. Had on a t-shirt and blue jeans, looking at cars. Well, he went right over to a Corvette. Now it's easy to think, well, yeah, in your dreams. Well, he really liked the Corvette. He said, gee, can I take it for a ride? And I went, sure, let's go. So we jumped in, it took for a ride, came back, walked in the office. I started writing up papers just like I expected him to really buy this. And I said, okay, you want to take this home with you today? How are you going to pay for this? He pulled up his t-shirt and started pulling out stacks of $20 bills. Laid them on my table, paid for the car, and drove off. Now, with my not prejudging that kid, rather trusting him, developing a relationship with him, it did develop trust and rapport. In the next year, when I count that kid, his brothers and sisters, his cousins, aunts, and uncles, I sold 14 cars to that one nuclear family. Now the question then becomes, why wasn't I using my graduate degree in clinical psychology? Or was I? Was I, in fact, using the very things I learned? It's all about understanding, listening, asking the right questions. Well, sure I was, but it's not a connection that most people would see. Most people would say, gee, you wasted your time going to school, and now you're a used car salesman? I mean, how low can you go? But I loved the process, absolutely loved it. In that period of time, being in Anaheim, California, I mean, we did a lot of exploring. We'd take off on a Thursday afternoon, jump in a car off the lot and drive to Las Vegas. Then I discovered it'd really be nice to have a motor home. Well, how am I going to get a motor home? You know, they're very expensive. I'm still a young kid, in my 20s. How am I going to do that? And I discovered, wait a minute, if I had a motor home, I already have a used car lot with high visibility. What if I rented that motor home out? And that's exactly what I did. I rented it out so I could book it any time that we wanted to use it. We had access to that, but then I rented it out other times, and it was just like a cash cow. Then I explained doing that to a couple of my friends, and I said, wow, I can set you up. We can set it here. The rent, we'll split 60-40. You get 60%. It'll cover all your payments on it, maintenance and all of that. You can use it anytime you want to. I get 40%. I ended up with 18 motor homes where I was doing that. And then I added motorcycle trailers. I mean, no brainer at all. People said, I'd like to take my motorcycles with me. Okay. So I bought these little trailers. They were like $450. No electronics, nothing to go wrong. 3 trailers on there. Rent them out. I was renting them out for $45 a day. 10 days of rental, and it's paid for, and then it's all cash. But it's always been like that. Just seeing ideas around every corner. We could just keep moving through. We were a young family, still had one little baby at that point. But I'd get up in the morning, having come from a farming environment, and now I get up and I rub the smog out of my eyes. And I drive through congested traffic to get down to the lot where I'm gonna work. And I thought, wow. And more we found ourselves leaving town, like on Thursday, jump in a motorhome, go to Lake Arrowhead, Lake Mead, one of the lakes in the Colorado River system, get out of town, and then come back. I thought, why don't we live somewhere where when I walk out the front door, I'm where I want to be, rather than having to get out of town on the weekends to go to where I want to be. That was the primary motivation. We decided we're going to leave.